Yeah, hi there. This is Markittleman, speech-language pathologist, and welcome. Welcome to the teaching of talking. I have something very important to discuss with you today, and it's about speech therapy, and it's about talking, and it applies to caregivers, and it also applies to parents of those children who have speaking difficulties. And it's a very, very important message that I have to share with you today because it has a profound influence on people who have speaking difficulties or children who have speaking difficulties and can really make or break a person's life depending on how it's approached. Now, the other day, I was in a situation where a gentleman had to come out to my home and address a concern that I had with the internet. And we started talking, and he asked me what I did. And I told him that I was a speech-language pathologist, and he told me that he had a son who was 10 years old who had two particular problems. One was a bilateral lisp, that's where you talk like this, and the S's come out of your mouth to the sides, okay? And probably some of you have heard that before from some individuals, but it's a significant distortion of speech, and it causes a lot of undue attention. Now, there was a very famous speech-language pathologist who is the grandfather, or who was the grandfather of the field of speech-language pathology, and his name was Dr. Charles Van Riper. And he said that a speech difficulty was defined as occurring when someone listens more to how you're saying something rather than to what the person is saying. So this particular bilateral lisp that this young man has is being treated by a speech therapist, and the father goes to the school and discusses it with the speech therapist. And so I asked him, did the speech therapist ever show you how to fix it? Well, no. Did she show you and demonstrate clear speaking and how to correct the sound? Well, no. Then I asked him, is your child improving in terms of being able to articulate the S? And he said, well, not really. So I found that very somewhat disheartening. Well, this story goes on just a little bit further. He also has a stammer. And a stammer is something that some people have, and it also causes a lot of undue attention. It's like a stutter. And when people talk, and if they stutter, the people around them look at them kind of funny, and also feel somewhat comfortable for the person who seems to be struggling when they talk. And so I asked the father further about what he does with his son when he stammers. And he says, well, I sit down and talk to him, and I say, you know, you really have to pay more attention to your speaking, and it's really important because people are paying attention to you, and you're a very smart person, and, you know, all of this kind of stuff. But when I asked the father if he knew anything about stammering, he said no. And I asked the father, does he know of any approaches that are being used to help a stammer? And he said no, but he had heard about some kind of a summer program somewhere that cost thousands and thousands of dollars. So what's my point? What's my point is that parents, like caregivers of those with aphasia and apraxia, usually have no idea about how to address a problem like apraxia, like aphasia, like a stammer, or like a bilateral lisp. They just don't know. And so what happens is they often try to correct the person who's got the speaking difficulty without any knowledge of exactly what to do or how to help them. Now, that's like giving somebody who comes up to you and asks you for some advice. It's trying to give people advice for something you know nothing about. I would never give anybody any advice for something I didn't know anything about. And yet it's being done every day. It's being done in social media. It's being done by people who are untrained, who are not knowledgeable, who tell someone to do something and think that that's going to correct a problem. Well, unfortunately, it very rarely does. And what happens is that it causes people who have speaking difficulties to become even more maladjusted than they are. Because let's face it, if you have a problem and no one shows you really how to fix it, and people are commenting on it, and your father's commenting on it, or your mother's commenting on it, and trying to tell you to do certain things, and those certain things don't really work, well, guess what? It's just going to make the person even more maladjusted and probably make the problem even worse. So what's my point? My point is that if you have a loved one, if you're a parent, or if you're a wife or a husband or a daughter or a brother or an uncle or an aunt, and you know somebody who's got a speaking difficulty, then try to find an expert who can take a look at the situation and who can devise a plan with specific goals that will meet the particular objectives of the problem. Because you know something? Most speech difficulties can be significantly improved. Now, what does it take to improve a speaking difficulty? Well, it takes expertise. Now, if you had a washing machine that was broken, you wouldn't call the pediatrician to come over to fix it. And it's just like anything else. If you had a leak in your roof, you wouldn't call a plumber. You see what I mean? What you need to do when you have a problem, or if you have I had a transmission go out in my car last summer, and I wouldn't call an air conditioning repairman to address that. I wouldn't go to a tire shop and tell them to address that. No. Why not? Well, because they don't have expertise. And so the most important thing you got to know, is that if you have a particular problem, if you have especially a speaking challenge, go find an expert. Go find an expert who has experience with that, knows how to correct it. But one of the most important concepts that I stress in all of my writings and teachings is that in almost any kind of speaking difficulty, it can be corrected so much more expediently if you can train a mother or a father or somebody in the family to help address it at home, because you got to remember that if you're going to replace good speaking for the speaking difficulty, you have to speak a lot with the good speaking. You know, it's like anything else. You know, you have to develop habits. Now, how do you develop habits? Well, you develop habits by repeating something over and over and over again. Okay, so if you have a bad habit of speaking and you want to learn a good habit of speaking, then you go to an expert who shows you how to do it. And then what you do is you go home and you apply that knowledge every time you speak. And that's why it's so very, very important to include the care partner or the mother or the dad or a family member in the process. This is Mark Ittleman, speech-language pathologist, speaking about overcoming speaking difficulties and some of the concepts that will help you achieve that or help a loved one that you have achieve that. So on that, down below is my email address. So if you want to send me an email, and if you have any questions, or we also have a questionnaire down below, so that if you have a question that you'd like to place to me, put it in the questionnaire. And just know also that we're having some upcoming seminars for parents or caregivers or wives or husbands of those, especially with aphasia or motor speech difficulties such as dysarthria or apraxia. So if you want to help your loved one speak better, go to an expert, hang out with the expert, have the expert look at the individual who's got the speaking difficulty and develop a plan so that that speaking difficulty can be improved upon with stimulation. So this is Mark Ittleman. I hope you've liked this little video. If you have, please give us a thumbs up. And down below we have a bunch of links. So if you'd like to attend a seminar, or if you'd like to purchase a video program for aphasia or severe speech and language difficulties, or if you'd like to join our Facebook page, or you'd like to be on our email mailing list, join our community, and we're here to help you. And those who reach out for help and those who usually do that get help. And if they get help, then guess what? The problem disappears or is replaced with a significant improvement. I just want to have one other real quick story to tell you. When we were traveling, everybody knows that we live in a motorhome and we lecture all over the United States and we work with people online. We were going down the road and the motorhome wasn't feeling very good. It wasn't operating very good. So I pulled over and, you know, I looked all over. I couldn't find anything. I looked at the engine. I looked underneath the motorhome. You know, I looked in the generator compartment. I looked all over, and heck, I couldn't find what the problem was. And so I figured, well, maybe it'll go away. Whatever you do, whether it's a speech difficulty or a mechanical difficulty, don't ever believe that maybe it'll go away, because usually they very rarely do. But anyway, so I was at the pump and I was pumping gas, and this guy comes over and he started looking at my tires. And, you know, I was a little taken back, because who the heck did he think he was, coming over to my motorhome and looking at my tires? But anyway, he looked around the tires and he said, "You got a minute?" And I said, "Yeah." He said, "Come on over here." I said, well, wait a minute, let me finish pumping the gas. So I went over and I talked to him, and he took out his flashlight and he shined it on one of my tires. And there was a big hunk of rubber that was kind of chopped out of the tire. There was a whole big piece that had disappeared somehow. I don't know how that ever happened, but he said, man, you better replace that tire or you're going to be going down the road and have a severe accident from a blowout. And he was right. So there's no excuse, and I want to repeat that one more time. There's no excuse if you have something that is happening in your life that's not normal. Get it addressed and find out what the recommendation is and learn what to do in the situation if you can. If you can't, have the professional do it. But when it comes to speech therapy, you need a professional, but you also need to learn what the professional does so that you can hasten along the progress. You can move the progress forward. So this is Mark Ittleman, speech-language pathologist. It's been great having this little chat with you today. I hope it's been beneficial, and we'll see you soon, okay? Bye-bye now.